Senate Democrats are now one step closer to a big legislative victory with their agenda. Arizona Senator Kyrsten Sinema has signed off overnight on her party's sweeping spending bill that will address climate, health care, taxes. Part of what secured her vote, though, removing a provision that would close the so-called carried interest tax loophole that enables hedge fund and other big deal investment managers to pay far lower taxes, if any taxes in some cases. The bill now facing review from the Senate parliamentarian as Democrats race to pass it before August recess. They have to sign off on it before Saturday's vote. Joining me now is Democratic Senator Bob Casey of Pennsylvania, a member of the Senate Health, Finance, and Intelligence Committees. So many things to ask you about. Senator Casey, thank you for coming in. So first, the parliamentarian has to rule that it's okay to do so-called reconciliation. This is in the weeds, but you have to get that before going to the floor and starting the lengthy process of amendments. And that Senator Schumer wants to do Saturday, a rare Saturday session, which would start the ball rolling. Do I have that right? To try to get this passed next week?
Yes, Andrea, the process has to start with an initial vote, but the difficult part will be the so-called vote-a-rama. We're voting on amendment after amendment. That could take a while. It could even take a couple of days. But I think a lot of people understand now, are beginning to understand what is at stake here. We have an opportunity in one bill to be able to make such progress on climate change by way of a significant investment of almost $370 billion to reduce emissions by 40% by 2030. That's a total game changer when it comes to our ability to push back against climate change. The other provision, of course, which I think a lot of Americans maybe know more about, is the prescription drug provision, which will reduce the cost of prescription drugs for millions of seniors. So in the same bill, when you can get lower prescription drug costs for seniors, you can lower energy costs for Americans, and then reduce both the threat of climate change and the deficit. It's a good bill. So we've got a lot of work to do to get it passed, but I think we will.
I know that Senator Sinema also wanted to add money for drought relief, which is, crippling the West with the heat wave, climate change. Did that money get in? I know I talked to Senator Bennett yesterday from Colorado, of course, your colleague, saying that it was critical to him, too.
Yeah, Andrea, my understanding is that will also be in the bill because of some changes that were made in the last day or so. But this is the kind of legislation where you can address a range of priorities. Not everything I would want. There are other issues I would add if I had the opportunity to do that. But when you can have legislation that's going to lower prescription drug costs and energy costs and take such a giant step forward on reducing emissions, this is a good bill. The other part about it is we're finally going to have a piece of legislation that says to a small group, about 150 large corporations, it's time for you to pay your fair share, just like American families are paying every single day. That provides the revenue here that offsets some of the investments we got to make.
But also offsets closing that loophole for the hedge fund folks who were going to continue with carried interest. But I want to move on to Russia. I want to ask you about what is happening right now. Secretary Blinken is in Manila. Russia's foreign minister says that they're ready to talk about a prisoner swap for Brittany Griner, who's been sentenced now to 9 years in a Russian penal colony, and also Paul Whelan, who's been there 4 years. But one of your constituents, Mark Fogel, convicted of drug smuggling and drug possession, given a 14-year sentence in Russia. Now, he's not been mentioned because the State Department says he doesn't qualify for that, that qualification to put him in that hostage negotiation status. Apparently, he did clearly broke the law, and with a bigger amount of the hashish that he apparently took in. But nobody's mentioning him. He's a beloved teacher of the children of our diplomats in Moscow, and Canadian and British diplomats, veteran there, and says that he needed it as medical marijuana. That's him and his wife. I think they're from the Pittsburgh area. Tell me, what can you do to get him into the mix?
Well, Andrea, I think the Mark Vogel's case is very similar to what happened to Brittany Griner, and the horror of that case. When we saw that outrageous sentence that was imposed upon her just yesterday, we want to prevent the same thing from happening in Mark's case. And there's obviously more work to do on Brittany Griner's case. But in the case of Mark, you outlined it perfectly about the reason why he came into Russia with medical marijuana to be able to treat an injury, and at the same time he's teaching the children of diplomats. Has been a dedicated teacher all these not only years but decades. And once again, you have the Russian Federation imposing these kinds of charges and sentences on Americans for political reasons. What I'm trying to do is to make sure that the State Department provides that designation, the wrongfully detained designation, the same that Brittany Griner has been categorized. Her case has been so categorized. We're going to continue to work with the State Department to urge them to do that, because that designation alone will help in Mark's case. But we have a lot of work to do. The State Department does as well. But these are cases where the Russian Federation are using these individuals for political reasons to push against us, largely, I would argue, because of what the support we're providing to the people of Ukraine.
And finally, I want to ask you about, on the home front, John Fetterman, your candidate for the U.S. Senate, is finally going to have his first rally after having a stroke suffering a stroke 2 days before the primary election, not being seen except maybe once at a fundraiser, clearly not being very, open about how bad his health was, including a heart condition. How concerned are you that your candidate for the Senate is this frail and hasn't been able to campaign until next week?
Well, John's off to a great start in the general election. He had about as good a post-primary time period as I've seen in recent history, where he's built a strong campaign on the foundation of a very strong primary win. Andrea, you know our state well. You know that we've got a lot of small rural counties in addition to the big cities like Philly and Pittsburgh. And in those small rural communities, John has a strong foundation with rural Democrats and even Republican voters. And so he's got a firm foundation. He's made really good progress since he had his stroke. He's starting to be able to campaign in person. I was with him 2 weeks ago in Philadelphia for one of the first in-person appearances. He's doing well on every indicator. And the other side, I think, is a mess. They have a candidate that's not connecting. John Fetterman's connecting, and he's connecting on these very issues that I spoke of earlier. Lowering the cost of prescription drugs, pushing back against the horrible threat of climate change, and focusing on economic strategies to lift people up, lift families up, and to create a lot of jobs. So I think John's campaign is in good shape right now. We know the tough part is ahead, but John's going to be very strong, and I think he's going to win.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks, Senator Bob Casey. Appreciate it. You've got a long weekend ahead of you on the Senate floor. Thanks. And signs of